Welcome to KX 39.1 Down Notable with our host, SJ.
I think we'll just keep that for the intro. Welcome back to DownNotableContent, everybody. My name is SJ, your host, and you will notice that Alex is not here. He's not here because he had something come up and he just couldn't be here, and we could not cancel on our guest here for the third time. We've canceled on him twice before. So we're just going to run with it.
If you guys really want me here or not.
Yeah, I know, right? So yeah, I'm going to run a solo, and Zack will basically be acting as my co-host today. How are you doing, Zack?
I'm doing great. Really excited to be on your podcast tonight. I'm looking forward to our topic today. Can barely wait to just rant and vent about all the things I love with this particular game series. So yeah, doing good. Excited to be here.
Good. I'm glad. I'm doing all right. I'm a little bit stressed out. I was telling you about the house and the gutter and the rain and the water in the basement. If any of you out there are knowledgeable about gutters and water running into the basement, please let me know.
He wants your mind in the gutters.
Yeah,
just this one time. Just this one time.
Yeah, I just had this thing where, like, at the corner of the basement, like a little bit of water seeps in from whatever cracks there are, right? It's just like when it rains or snows like a lot, the corner of the carpet just gets like a little bit damp. It's not like a huge deal because I just put a fan on it and then it'll dry in a couple of days. But it stresses me out and I really don't like it. And we've been getting a lot of rain and snow lately. So, Zack, today we have you here to discuss Metroid. And I don't know anybody that loves Metroid as much as you do.
I love Metroid.
So this is going to be, kind of a casual interview type of format like we discussed. But I kind of want it to be a sort of like a retelling of your journey with Metroid.
Okay.
And so maybe I'll start off with a question and we can just go wherever this question takes us. Tell us about your first experience with Metroid and how you've come to love it so much.
Yeah, so not sure if I told you this, but yeah, my very first experience with Metroid came way back in 2002 when Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion were released that same year. And at the time...
how old were you back then?
I think I was like, I can't do math in my head. I was under 10 years old.
Yeah.
I think I was somewhere between like 7 and 10 years old.
Okay.
So pretty young, still new to gaming in general. But we just got into GameCube and everything. And my uncle, he got me a copy of Metroid Fusion and Metroid Prime. And so it was so long ago, I don't remember which game I played first. I just remembered I played them both that same year. So we're just going to say they were both my first Metroid games. But anyways, yeah.
Did you finish one all the way through first and do the other one? I feel like as a kid, when you have two games, it's really hard to discipline yourself.
I think I finished Fusion first. Because I had my Game Boy Advance, and Fusion is a bit more little kid friendly with it being a Game Boy game. Mm-hmm. So pretty sure I finished Fusion first, and then I did Prime because I do remember quickly being able to unlock the Fusion suit in Metroid Prime. Because back then, you could hook up your Game Boy Advance to the GameCube and unlock special features and stuff. And so if you completed Metroid Fusion...
I didn't know you could do that in Metroid Prime.
Yeah, so in the original GameCube... Could you do that on the
trilogy?
In the trilogy, you earned points for like achievements in the game, and then you could buy the suit.
Okay.
But in the original GameCube release, yeah, if you beat Metroid Fusion, you could unlock the fusion suit in Prime. It was a really cool feature.
Because the trilogy was on the Wii, and you can't connect a GameCube.
Yeah, that was
GBA
later
to the Wii. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those were my first, and I just fell in love with them. But what's funny is like, as much as I love them, they scared the crap out of me as a kid. Like,
they were scary. Like
they're freaky. Like when you're a little kid playing
are.
Metroid for the first time, it is freaky.
It's really confusing who the target audience for that game is.
Yeah.
I mean, just in general, like.
And that might be why they don't do as well compared to other Nintendo games, because like
that's true. Yeah.
They are unusually intense.
They
for
are
a
intense.
Nintendo game. I mean, you think about Nintendo, what do you think about? You think about Mario, Yoshi, Kirby, Pikachu, Zelda.
Everything rated E.
Yeah.
E plus 10 maybe tops.
Like when Twilight Princess came out, Zelda, and it was T, like everyone's like, holy crap.
Yeah, it's rated
like,
T, holy
how
crap.
intense is it to be T?
Yeah.
Like, and it was kind of dark. You know, there's some funky stuff going on in the Twilight realm.
Yeah.
But like, it's still Nintendo. Like, Metroid Prime was significantly freakier as a kid than Twilight Princess was, significantly. So, but what was weird though is like, as someone who hates horror movies, as someone who like literally can't watch Alien or anything like that, which Metroid is largely inspired from, like the Alien series was a huge inspiration for the whole Metroid genre.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in fact, that's where the villain Ridley gets his name from, was Ridley Scott.
Oh.
Yeah, that's where it comes from.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and then I think if I remember right, the Metroids are loosely based off of the Xenomorphs. Like they drew inspiration from the Alien series when building out Metroid. But yeah, I can't watch scary movies. It's just too much. But I can do Metroid for some reason.
So, despite the scary aspects of Metroid, and I know this because, well, my first experience with Metroid was I got the Prime trilogy on the Wii. I don't remember. I think like my uncle gave it to me or something. Yeah, shout out to Seth if you're listening. I think you gave me the Metroid trilogy on the Wii. I could be wrong, but because I don't think it's a game that I would have gone out and bought just because I didn't know anything about it. So yeah, in middle school, I played through the trilogy with a good friend of mine, and I had to play it with him because I was too scared to play it alone in middle school. So despite the dark tone, you know, you're always all alone. You have no allies as Samus. Like, what about Metroid? And I kind of want to hear answers specifically from Fusion and Prime because they're both very different games, 2D, 3D. What about it hooked you so much that you were able to overcome the scariness and you still wanted to play the game?
That's a really good question. So, you know, if I could describe the Metroid series in just like a couple words, it'd be like beautiful dread, if that makes sense, or like dreadful wonder. It's a weird dichotomy, but like what I'm getting at with that is, I'll start with Prime because Prime's the most easy example to explain this. Is when I first played Prime, and I'll never forget this, it had the most incredible first level of a video game I'd ever played. And quite frankly, 20 years later, I still think it's like the best opening level of any video game I've ever played.
What about the Great Plateau?
Better than the Great Plateau.
Wow.
I do think there's reasons for that. And that's because the way that Fusion as well and Prime just sucked me in, like they have incredibly intense hooks. Like I had no idea what the series was. I'd never played it before. Only thing I knew about Samus was she was a Smash Brothers character on the N64.
Right.
And like in Fusion, when you start the game, like, you know, it's just giving you this little cutscene. And it talks about like the X parasite infecting you, and it's really intense, and you almost die. And there's like surgery, little screenshots like of surgery, and like you're like, holy crap, like what happened? Like she almost died, and but then they find the cure, and you like become this like new warrior and stuff, and it just plops you in this station. After Samus says, "I received this message about an explosion in this space station, and for some reason it awoke this nameless fear in my heart." I'm like, that is just such good writing. Like even at like 7 years old, I'm like, what is happening? Like, that is
Yeah.
like the coolest hook ever. And that's what it leaves you with. It just says, it awoke a nameless fear in my heart. And then you just go to the space station, investigate this, and you find out all this crazy crap happened with that infection. And then Prime, totally different experience because it's 3D. And I think this is what really sunk me into Metroid was, you know, they give, it's a cleverly designed tutorial level, really, but you walk through these doors, you're learning how to shoot your cannon and stuff, and you really step into the frigate, this dilapidated frigate, for the first time, and then you hear music for the first time, and it's like this, like,
creepy,
like, it's just like really ominous.
Yeah.
And as you hear that, you see this massive slug looking thing on fire. Like there's just this room, and like there's dead aliens, other aliens eating the dead aliens, everything's on fire. This massive crab slug looking thing just taking up half the room, and you're like, what happened here?
Yeah.
Like, if that doesn't hook you and make you want to keep going, nothing in the game will. Because, like, and that is just, like, again, like, I'm this little kid, and I'm, like, scared out of my mind, but I still wanted to go. Like, there is something about the way they introduce you to the world, to the game, that it's like, I mean, I have the white guy in the horror movie syndrome. It's like, I shouldn't want to go into this dangerous building, and yet here I am,
I'm gonna go
doing
anyway.
that very thing. I don't know, there's something about it. Okay. And it just, and like I said, with that dreadful awe, like, there's this weird beauty and allure to the underlying horror of it, because they don't specifically tell you something's wrong, you just know something's wrong, or if the fact that a creature of that size is dead, it's like, what killed it, you know?
Okay, so to me it sounds like it's really the world that hooks you then, right? And the mystery of it, and the fact that it gives you more questions than it gives you answers, right? And it makes you want to go out and seek those answers. I'm surprised that as like a kid younger than 10 years old, that was more powerful. Your intrigue was more powerful than your fear. Because for me, that would have been completely the other way around. Yeah. Yeah,
no, it is really interesting to look back on, because what doesn't make sense is when I was that same age, I remember playing Ocarina of Time, and I made it to Hyrule Field as a little kid. And when I saw one of the Style Children pop out of the field, I just turned it off. And
the Style Children scared me.
And
so
I didn't
much.
come back and actually play Ocarina of Time for like 3 years. Like I was so scared of those stupid little skeletons. But I could play Metroid for some reason.
Yeah, that's very backwards. I have no idea what's going on there.
But like I said, I think what it is it's like there was something about that world that it made me want to conquer it. And there was something about being this like kick butt warrior in like Master Chief armor. Like, I was like, I'm scared crapless, but I can do it. Like, and I can muscle through it, and I can figure this out. But that's really the big draw of the Metroid games, though, is it's the world. And what's interesting is when Nintendo, apparently, this is what I've researched, apparently when Nintendo was trying to like say what kind of character Samus was, they thought the word bounty hunter meant explorer.
Oh.
So Samus was never intended to be this intergalactic mercenary. She was intended to be an explorer. So all their games were based around world building and exploration. It wasn't until much later that the bounty hunter persona was actually played into a little bit more.
They had to conform to it because they
just kept using the words. So yeah, when you read the pirate data in Metroid Prime, they call her the Hunter. And then when you go into Metroid Prime 3, you know, it talks about her working with the Intergalactic Federation, and you're with
Yeah.
other bounty hunters, and they send her on missions. Like, they play into the mercenary role a bit more, but early on, no. The first 4 or 5 Metroid games, yeah, that was the intent. It was
Wow.
to actually explore this alien world and defeat the evil that was corrupting it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, have you played every single Metroid game?
I have not finished every single Metroid game, but I have
Okay.
played every mainline Metroid game. So I still need to finish Metroid 2, but I have finished every other game. So Metroid Zero Mission, which is a remake of the first Metroid. I haven't finished the NES version, I must admit. That is really hard to stomach because it is just... I'm sorry, hot take.
That's
the
how it is
NES
for me
era,
with
like
a lot of
that,
old 2D Zeldas too. I don't.
yeah,
blame
I can't do NES games most of the time. It's just too hard. But I've played Zero Mission, which is the same story with some extra content and, of course, better graphics.
it. Okay.
Working on Metroid 2, Super Metroid, all the Prime games, and Other M, which that's all I'll say. Maybe I'll talk about it more if the question comes up. And then, yeah, Fusion and Dread. So, like, I've pretty much played the whole mainline series. I just never had a chance to play Metroid 2 for a while, and so now I'm working on that on my 3DS.
Okay. So I think a lot of our listeners probably haven't played Metroid, just because Metroid is one of the least popular Nintendo games, although they still sell decent, but not as much as other popular Nintendo games.
True.
For probably the reasons that we talked about. There's a lot of Metroid games out there at this point, 2D, 3D.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think those games differ from one another? Like in terms of, you know, the 2D ones and the 3D ones, and which ones do you think would be like a good intro to Metroid?
So the 2D ones obviously were part of what pioneered the genre in the first place. Super Metroid especially helped popularize the side-scroller platformer adventure backtracking kind of bit, along with Castlevania Symphony of the Night. That's where you get, you know, Metroidvania from. It's those two games are very similar in style, and
Right.
and now we've got modern stuff like Hollow Knight or Ori and the Blind Forest, Guacamelee. That was actually a really fun one. Hidden Gem. If you haven't played Guacamelee, I really enjoyed it. But anyways, if you're the type of person who's played Hollow Knight, and I'm pretty sure everyone and their dogs played Hollow Knight by this point, if you're the person who likes that, I would start with a 2D Metroid game, and specifically, I'd probably start with Metroid Dread. It is one of the best Metroid games ever made. It's just, you know, it's at the end of the timeline, so there might be a lot of stuff you won't appreciate if you haven't played the rest of the timeline, but it does catch you up enough in the beginning that it's not a problem.
Are all the games chronological?
They are. Yeah, no, they are. There is a chronological order to the games. So the 2D games are all named Metroid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I remember right, Metroid Dread is 5. Don't quote me on that. But here, actually, I can do it in my head. So yeah, I think it's Metroid 5. And so those are in a chronological order. But Metroid Prime takes place between Metroid 1 and Metroid 2. It's like a little subset.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay,
that
I
whole
didn't know that.
timeline takes place between the very first Metroid and then Metroid 2. Now, in Metroid 2, the point of that game is the Galactic Federation sends you on a mission to exterminate all of the Metroid aliens, which, if you haven't played the games, they're basically these energy-sucking vampire bulbs. Like, they're
Like the spherical things with 3 fangs on them, right?
Yeah, like little mushrooms with 3 fangs and stuff, and they float around and suck the energy out of stuff. And the more energy they suck out, the more they can evolve and grow. And so they were becoming a problem, and you had to kill them all in Metroid 2. But between that game and the first one, the Metroid Prime series happens. Now, we're going to have to see with Metroid Prime 4 coming out eventually. Nintendo, hurry up. We need it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
We'll have to see if 4 is going to tie us into the rest of the timeline, because the end of 3 doesn't really tie you in to Metroid 2. We're still not sure how the Prime trilogy like loops us in there, to my
Wait,
understanding.
so Prime 1, 2, 3 are all in between Metroid 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All the Prime games are
Okay.
between 1 and 2. It's a self-contained storyline.
Mm.
And I can't spoil it for you guys. There's a reason it's like that. But yeah, there's a reason for that.
Okay.
So anyways, so going off on a tangent there a little bit, but
so
yeah,
Dread would be a good starting
Dread's
point.
a great starting point if you like games like Hollow Knight, the 2D side-scroller platformer.
Okay.
If you're the type of person who likes Halo or Destiny or really any kind of first-person shooter, like that's more your kind of vibe, then definitely buy Metroid Prime Remastered, because that is going to be more your speed, and they've updated it with modern dual stick controls, and it is a significantly better experience than it was with the GameCube controller in 2002.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, when I played through it on the Wii, I played it with the motion controls, and that was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was so cool. It was super immersive. Like, the lock-on system still worked just fine, and you could still just shoot it wherever. Anyway, okay. Well, that's good to know. I'm personally not a huge 2D action person myself. The last time I really gave that genre a shot, granted this is like pretty different from Metroid, but it was Link's Awakening, the remake on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't do it. I played it for a few hours and I just lost interest.
Oh, no.
I just lost interest. And I have the same problem with Metroid. Like, I think I tried playing like one of the SNES ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, I lost interest. But I've played through all the Primes. They're absolutely fantastic. They're a little scary, but they're absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, it really comes down to taste at that point. Because it's different. First person sucks you in a way that side scrollers don't. So, totally.
No, it's
fair.
true. It's very different. And I mean, I know, like, and it's not even like an age thing either, right? Like, it's just whether you prefer that genre or not. Yeah. So we kind of talked about how Metroid is generally less popular than Nintendo's other franchises. In terms of like gaming as a whole, right? You talked about Destiny. We've got a lot of first-person shooters out there, really good ones these days. And I think that genre has been polished over the years so much to the point that, in terms of control and action and everything, that a lot of modern like first-person shooter titles feel pretty similar and look pretty similar. I guess what I'm trying to ask is, in terms of like, gaming as a whole, how do you think Metroid differentiates itself to be worthy of someone's like investment into the franchise? Like, what sets it apart from other video games?
So, at least looking at it in the first person end of their offerings, because you're mentioning Destiny and everything, the genius of Retro Studios, the developers who took Metroid into the 3D space for the first time, is that they were somehow able to perfectly capture the platforming puzzle experience of the 2D games in a 3D space. And as a kid, I didn't appreciate that, because remember, it was one of my first, and I was too young to like get game theory, well, this kind of game theory, the game design theory, and all of that stuff. But in my older years, like, I can see how incredible of a feat it was that they were able to take, a genre that is pretty probably get some flack for this, pretty copy paste. When you play a first person shooter, you get plopped into a bow zone, you shoot things until they don't move anymore, and then that's the end of the game. And people repackage it in various ways, but you strip it down enough and it's basically just shoot everything in front of you until it's dead. And what differentiates the Metroid Prime series is they are first person shooter second and platformer first, because of the way that the Metroid games are designed. So
even in 3D.
Even
right?
in 3D. Yeah. So I haven't played Metroid Prime for a while, and when Remastered came out, like I immediately, like literally didn't think about it once. I just immediately bought a digital version and downloaded it and played it. And at this point, almost being 30, looking back on it, and I'd since played, you know, the whole series, I was like, wow, this game literally feels like Super Metroid, but in 3D. And like I really appreciated that for the first time, because Super Metroid came out in 1993, if I remember right, and that was the last Metroid game until Metroid Prime in 2002. So Metroid Prime is really the Ocarina of Time of the Metroid series. First time it was in the 3D space, and they just
executed
knocked it out of the
really
park.
well.
It is, words cannot do justice to the level of black magic they did to make that first experience so good. So if you're looking at this and you're like, it looks like Halo with platforming, that's not at all what it is. Halo has missions, and even Halo Infinite, which is open world, you still have missions. You just move to a checkpoint to start a mission, and then you kill everything on a rail until you're done, and then you're done. So if you're thinking, okay, Metroid Prime just looks like Halo, but it's a girl and there's platforms, totally missing the point and the draw of the game. It is an exploration game. It's where you're piecing together the story of a civilization that was killed off, and the only clues left behind are shimmering tablets on a wall that you scan, and you read the record of the previous inhabitants. And so it's a really cool storytelling method, because there's no real cutscenes, there's no dialogue. You're just exploring. You land on this planet chasing a particular enemy, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, there's buildings here, there's ruins. Where did these come from? Why are there no people? Why is everything dead? Like, there's clearly a thriving civilization and now it's gone. And you just piece together what's going on. And so it's a really fascinating game where it's like, yeah, you've got that mission, track down this enemy you meet on the frigate, but you're also trying to figure out what happened to this planet, what's my place on it, and what am I doing here?
So, sorry.
Yeah.
Are you... So, like, let's say, you know, someone playing Metroid Prime Remastered for the first time, or Dread, or whatever, are you able to, without understanding the context of the entire timeline and lore and story of the Metroid universe, are you still able to understand what's going on within that one game and appreciate the story by reading those things?
Yeah, definitely. That's actually one thing that's really nice about the game. You know, I'm going on here about the whole story, and granted, I have the context of the whole timeline here, but like, each game can be enjoyed on its own as its own experience. And that's one
so
of the
you can
really...
still get what's going on.
It's like The Legend of Zelda, you know? Like, Majora's Mask makes more sense if you played Ocarina of Time, but you don't have to play Ocarina of Time to enjoy Majora's Mask.
And Majora's Mask is probably the one that most would benefit in terms of story if you'd played Ocarina of Time. And every single other one, I think.
Exactly, yeah, and that's like Metroid Dread with Metroid Fusion. Metroid Dread is the direct successor to Fusion, and there's a lot of cool stuff that goes in there, but you don't need to. You know, that and also with going on about story, really anyone who's still listening who plays Metroid is probably thinking, what story? You know, it's not really that story rich of a game. You know, you make up a lot of your own narrative in your head as you're wandering around. I mean,
but I'm not gonna lie, the first time I played through Prime, like on the trilogy series on the Wii, I did not read all the little things.
Yeah.
Like I just did the missions and then I beat the boss. like I now that you're talking about all this, I kind of wish that I had, because I think I would have appreciated the world a lot better that way.
I mean, growing up, I was the kid that read every plaque in a museum.
Well, you're a history major.
I went to school for history. Like, I will admit, full disclosure with my bias, I love stories. I love history. Like, that's just what I do everywhere I go on, vacations. I'm like, ooh, a plaque. Let me read about the history of this monument or this river or this, giant beaver. Like, I mean, just I'll read about it. I'm really interested in stories and context. But the nice thing about these games, though, is you don't have to know that stuff to still enjoy it, because I still think the gameplay is very fun.
Right.
And that's really, I think, why Metroid Prime, the first one, is one of the only games I've ever given a perfect 10 out of 10 to. The gameplay is incredibly fun. And you couple that with the story, the world building, the graphics, which, by the way, the GameCube graphics on that game pursued well into the Xbox 360 era. I have played Xbox 360 games that look similar to Metroid Prime in terms of quality. Like,
no, those have aged really well.
Aged incredibly well.
Yeah.
So great visuals, great gameplay, great story if you choose to read it along the way. It just did everything right. Perfect first level. Like, if that first level doesn't hook you, then yeah, just return the game, because like it is just one of the coolest first levels I've ever played. And yeah, it just checks off all the boxes for me. And if something like that intrigues you, if you're the kind of person who just wants to go explore and blow stuff up, then I mean, yeah, Metroid's great for you.
I would add too that, like, Metroid, kind of like everything that you said that sets it apart, right? Like the story, it's a platformer first, shooter second. Even though the combat is really good and there's a lot of that there, it's also just, it's a straight up first, one player experience. I think one of the biggest weaknesses that a lot of first person shooters have these days is it's always multiplayer first, and then whatever supplementary campaign or whatever comes second to that, if not third or fourth.
Yeah.
And I personally really don't like that, because I'm not a huge like online multiplayer guy anyway. Like, and maybe that's just because I'm not super good, right? Like, I don't want to go online and just like get my butt handed to me. Like, I'd rather have a rich story and like really intriguing campaign. And that's why I actually like the Halo series so much, because like they focus so much on the campaign, and you can do that co-op with your friends and stuff. And anyway, so yeah, having played a lot of those different games in the shooter genre, Metroid is truly unique, and it really can't be compared to any other game that I can think of right now that's even close to it in terms of gameplay, story.
No, I've never played anything really like it. It's a really unique niche of a game.
Yeah.
And that might partially also be why the sales are a bit lower, because it's like you need to find someone who loves exploration, loves shooter genres, loves platforming, all at the same time in space. Like, all four, you have to love all four of those things at once.
Yeah.
In order for it to like really gel. And luckily I am one of those people. I love all four of those things. But yeah, it's a really interesting niche. There's really no other games quite like it. But it has defined a genre. I mean, Metroidvanias are like, got a really big surge with indie developers. Hollow Knight is literally like the best example I can think of, because it has such a huge cult following.
Just the word Metroidvania should tell you that
exactly.
Metroid is a foundation of an entire genre of games.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually loved Hollow Knight so much as well, because it is the first indie Metroidvania I've played that made me feel like I was playing a Metroid game. But it wasn't Metroid. It wasn't in space.
That's really cool.
Like, Hollow Knight gave me the exact same sense of awe and wonder, if not more so, I might even say, in some ways, than Metroid Fusion did as a comparison 2D game, because I had no idea what was going on. I was just really sucked in with the gorgeous music, the hand-drawn visuals. Everywhere I went, I just wanted to explore the world, and I wanted to piece together what was going on. Now, Hollow Knight has a very confusing story. I had no idea what was going on when I finished. I had to Google the ending to understand, and then I spoiled 2 other endings in the process and made myself really sad about that, because I didn't know there were multiple endings, but still loved the game. It gets a 9 out of 10 for that, because the story could have been way...
9 out of 10 that's a really good score.
It was still really good, you know? Like, I still enjoyed the game, even though I had no idea what was going on. Anyone who plays it will tell you that. Like, yeah, I have no idea what's going on. I just can't stop playing it. Like,
I mean, I love Kingdom Hearts, so
yeah.
I really couldn't tell you everything that's going on in that franchise.
Say no more. But anyways, yeah. So, yeah, that's
Okay.
it's really unique.
Okay.
It's a really unique game.
I would add too, you know, when you were talking about how you have to love a lot of different genres. You've got to love platforming. You've got to love, you know,
Combat,
space and shooting. Like, I would add an asterisk to that, because I think Metroid can get you to like some of those things. Like, for example, I am not a big platformer guy. I like Super Mario, but I couldn't play a lot of it in one sitting session because I get bored of it. And frankly, aside from Mario, I can't think of a single platforming game that I really enjoy. I just find it boring. I want more action. But Metroid platforming, I enjoyed that. In terms of Prime, at least. I can't speak for the 2D ones. So, and like the platforming is, like, it's got puzzles with it, right? So like the way I look at Metroid, it's like a really dark version of Zelda, in the sense that it's got puzzles and there's a cool story there, although the delivery of the story is different. But it's with a gun.
You know what? As you were talking about that, yeah, I just had a realization with some, as you bringing up Zelda and Metroid, why I liked, or why I wanted to keep pushing through the fear of Metroid versus Zelda.
Okay.
I think, and we're touching on all that, is in Zelda, when you experience creepy enemies, they're creepy to be creepy. Like, it's just a scary thing. Like, you know, skeletons popping out of the ground. Like, that's just scary.
Bottom of the well.
That game should not have been for children. Holy crap. Yeah, and it was just freaky. But what's different about Metroid is it taps into our primal instincts.
Metroid Primal.
Well, yeah, and that is something I don't experience very often in video games.
So what do you mean by?
So when I say primal instincts, I mean like those natural, like, survival, like hunting, like there's just like this like beast in you almost,
like
that
fight
or flight. It triggers your fight or flight response, and these games are master classes in that. Like, there's one particular mission in Metroid Prime where, like, you're walking through this laboratory, you get this item, and then all the lights go off, and it is pitch dark. Ooh. And then you hear glass break, and you hear Metroid screeching. It's like,
oh no!
and you can't see. Like, there's literally nothing.
Oh no!
And so you like switch to like this thermal visor. And like it's just this blurry orbs floating around that you have to shoot with weapons that are ineffective against them, and you have to fight your way out of this laboratory in the pitch dark for like a solid 8 minutes. And like there's things
so
flying
stressful.
at you, flying at your face, and you've got pirates jumping out of the rafters. Shit, like it is just full body caveman level instincts getting you out of this laboratory. Zelda doesn't give me that. Zelda just scared me. This was more like a primal fear. Like it was like, like the dark forest kind of level of thinking where you're just like out there trying to like get through something. And so, yeah, it's totally different.
That is? I think it's the immersion.
Yeah.
Because Metroid is a lot more immersive. I think, like, solely, maybe not solely, but primarily because you're first person. You are Samus. You're not really thinking about, oh, I'm controlling Link.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I'm playing Metroid, I'm not even really thinking about Samus. I'm like, I mean, you see the visor on the screen and everything. Like, you are, that bounty hunter doing everything. Mm-hmm. So,
although what was a really cool touch, though, is when you blow stuff up close to your face, you do get to see Samus's eyes in the visor.
You do. You see
and
a
that
flash,
was like the coolest thing in
cool.
2002.
It's
like
so
that
cool.
didn't exist in video games in 2002. That was like so cool.
No, yeah.
But yeah, it's way more immersive.
The immersion is next level. It was completely ahead of its time. When the Prime series came out, I think the music it really gets you in the mood, right? Like whether it's a really serious boss fight or, you're going down you're exploring a creepy ship or whatever. The music is kind of low key. Mm-hmm. It's not in your face about it, and it's just in the background, and that's what, at least for me, when I played through the Prime series, really helped me get immersive, and it's the reason why I couldn't play it alone, was because I got too scared.
Yeah. Well, like to jump back to Fusion, which by the way, I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning, you can play both of these games on the Switch right now through the Game Boy Advance Virtual Console and then of course Metroid Prime Remastered. Both of these games are available to play on the Switch. Highly recommend checking them out. But one thing that Fusion did well for me, and have you ever played Fusion? Have you ever tried it?
I have. You've recommended it to me.
Okay, maybe when this podcast is over, I need to boot it up for you because I have my Switch with me. I've got my little controller. We'll have to give it a shot because there's an element of the game in Metroid Fusion where, I'm because I'm going to show you, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but there's this game mechanic they put in where you discover this particular enemy and it's running loose in the station and you have no idea when you'll run into it, where it is. Jeez. And they tell you from the beginning none of your weapons can destroy it. So you're playing, so like you're this 7-year-old kid playing this game and the game tells you if you see it, run.
Yeah.
Like
that's
Samus
terrible.
Is basically Master Chief in
Don't
the
you
Nintendo
do that
world.
in Dread too? Don't you have to just run away from that thing, the robot thing?
They got the Emmy robot, similar thing, but this one's even freakier because in Dread, and this is why Dreads didn't quite check off the boxes for me like Fusion did, is there's the Emmy zones. When you play Dread, there's a very defined area where you'll experience the Emmy robots.
Okay.
In Fusion, they had a similar mechanic, but there were no Emmy zones. You just played the whole game wondering
when it's going to come
when
out.
It's going to come up and when it's going to come out, and then you just have to run, and it chases you for a long time, and it like,
oh gosh.
And so in a way, to me, Fusion gave me way more dread than Dread actually did, purely because if the Emmy, because actually that's what disappointed me about Dread. I was actually really excited to be even more scared out of my mind.
Yeah.
But when I found out there was a zone, it just instantly was like, oh, I mean, this is stressful, but it's more like Metroid anxiety attack than Metroid Dread. Because, like, yeah, when the Emmys see you, like, the music is horrifying. It's
right.
like Guardian and Breath of the Wild level stressful. You're just like, oh, I'm going to die. And I usually did. But I knew I could leave the zone if I got stressed and they'd stop chasing me.
Yeah.
And that was a huge L for me. Like, I had to knock off a whole point. It's a wonderful game, but like, I just feel like there was so much potential to have, like, to maybe make the Emmy roam the whole biome. Like, if it could just wander the biome, that would maybe be a little better. But
it's funny that you mention that, because if I were the one playing Dread, and I don't think I will play Dread realistically, I would definitely prefer to have it a zoned off thing.
And that's probably why they did it. Like, this is personal taste. Like I said, this is personal taste.
You're
I'm not
just
saying
you're
it's
just hardcore.
I'm hardcore. I'm not saying it's a bad game design decision. It's just compared to what I was expecting based on how I played Fusion, I was expecting something like that. I didn't get it.
That makes sense.
I've never heard anyone complain about this detail. This is a just me thing. Yeah. I would have liked it to be significantly more stressful. So, like, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt here. Please play Dread. It's literally one of the best Metroid games ever made. Absolutely love it. But anyways, yeah. So Fusion awakes that kind of fear in you as well in a 2D perspective, though. And like, yeah, both of those games aged me considerably. Like, that's probably why everyone says I have an old soul, because I was 7 when I played them, and then I was like 28 by the time I finished them. Like, I just jumped like 20 years with the stress those games put me under. Like, I would like drop my Game Boy. Like, I would just like, ah! Like,
oh my gosh.
Or like, it was too much for little kid me to handle. But anyways, so hopefully I'm not hogging up too much by just going on and on.
No, you're good. You're good.
But that is really like what makes me so passionate about the Metroid games is they're not horror games. They really, what it is they're more tapping into like primal survival instincts that I don't see in a lot of video games that I've played. The only other game that I can think of off the top of my head that gave me this same level of primal instincts was Horizon Zero Dawn. I have played hunting games. I've played Cabela's hunting games, and Horizon Zero Dawn made me feel like a hunter more than literal hunting games. Because the way they constructed your combat against the machines, you are horribly outmatched. Like, you're this little...
You have to outwit everything.
Yeah, you're just this regular human with a bow and arrow, like full bore, like Amazonian tribe going up against like SEAL Team 6 basically, and like you have to figure out how to beat them. You know, you've got these giant thunder jaws with like laser scanners and like mine launchers, and that was like the coolest thing ever, like sliding under their bellies and like shooting terror blast arrows and like setting traps and then luring the blowbacks, and like it was just the coolest thing. Like, every time I saw a machine, I'd instantly hide in the grass, I'd target them. Look at the walking patterns, and I would plan like a Ghost of Tsushima level ninja attack on all these machines, and then walk away feeling like a boss, you know.
It's very gratifying.
It's really gratifying, and it really makes you feel like a hunter, and that's the only other game that's made me feel those similar instincts that Metroid does, especially the Metroid Prime series.
That's very interesting because those are very different games. And I guess to an extent, you know, some of that, you know, what kind of game gets you to be so immersed that you have those kinds of feelings is probably subjective to some extent. But because I love Horizon, and I'm still trying to determine whether like I've experienced what you're describing here, you know, the kind of game that brings out your primal instincts. But the only comparison that I can make is like when I'm like so immersed that I get scared, like I did in Metroid. And I don't think I could say that any other game has made me feel that way. Because, you know, whenever I thought about, like, you know, going back and playing Metroid, you know, after a couple days with my buddy or whatever, I'd have to think, oh, I'm going to go back to that place. You know, I'm going to have to deal with this. Like, I had to, like, mentally prepare myself to be in Samus's shoes to, like, tackle those difficulties. And I've never really experienced that with any other game. It's truly a unique experience. So now, the most recent Metroid games are Metroid Dread, 2D, and then we've got the Prime Remaster. How would you rate those out of 10?
So Prime Remastered, once again, gets a perfect 10 out of 10. It is a beautiful remaster, and like the ideal way to experience Metroid Prime. It gives me those, this is what I thought it looked like when I was a kid vibes.
Yeah.
And then there were some things like, oh, that looks way better than when I was a kid. Like they really did a fantastic job of that. They were perfectly true to all the source material except one thing. It's such a stupid thing. I'm not going to give it a 9 out of 10 for this because it's not that big a deal. But in 2002, when it first came out, there's this room right like near the beginning of the game where there's like a mirror on the wall. And like I would just like walk back and forth and watch my reflection in the mirror and like jump up and down and stuff. They took that out. They don't have that mirror in the remaster. I'm like, seriously, we made this game look this incredible and we don't get an updated mirror. Like, was it really that taxing on the game at that point to not give us the mirror?
And that must have been a conscious decision, right?
Stupid, yeah, it had to be. So just stupid complaint, but I gotta say, I gotta get it off my chest.
That's funny.
And then the doors, I guess, look a little bit different as well. But again, that I actually like the way they look. They're not too bad. But anyways, fantastic remaster. They really rebuilt the visuals. 10 out of 10. Everything a remaster should be, really. And then
you say Dread was 9 out of 10?
Dread's a 9 out of 10. And that is, again, that's kind of personal preference. I would have liked the Emmys to be implemented a little differently, because here's my take with it.
So the Emmys are the white robots, right?
Yeah, the white robots that are trying to capture you and stab you. And here's my gripe with it is the game is called Metroid Dread, and I played the game and I felt no dread. Fusion made me feel significantly more dread. And and they even actually, a fun little interesting history tidbit is they wanted to make this game like 20 years ago. Like this was
modeled
always
after
intended,
Fusion specifically.
Like I can't remember if it was modeled after a sequel to it or if it was like, or how it went, but Dread was, the concept of it was on the table as far back as 2002 era.
Wow.
But they just weren't ready to implement it yet, and that's the story if I remember right. But anyways, you know, Metroid and the way one of the main villains of the game works, like it really does make you stressed everywhere you go. But Dread, it just felt more like, yeah, you know, oh, okay, it's all contained within a box. When something's contained, for me, I can compartmentalize. I'm like, okay, this game is dreadful in this exact spot of the map. Yeah. Outside of that, it just feels like a fantastic Metroid game, you know? But it's only dreadful in that one zone. And for that one zone, yes, I am like, okay, I'm really stressed right now. Yeah. But once I leave, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm fine. Okay, I'm going back in, you know? Fusion just kept you in that. You just stayed in that zone. You're
just crazy and want to be stressed out constantly as you're playing the game.
Constantly stressed out as I'm playing. Yes, like I said, this is my own bias. And also, controls, a little interesting for me to try and get used to with a couple things. I would have liked customization for the controls, more like you have with Prime. You can swap buttons around and stuff like that. I wish Dread had a little bit of that. And I'm trying to remember if there's anything else. No, I mean, it's fantastic. Like I said, it's just like little things that keep it from being perfect for me. I literally have no complaints for Prime, like literally none at all. Wow. Dread, just a couple little things. My 10 out of 10s, anyone who knows me, my 10 out of 10s are totally unfair. Like I am unforgiving with 10 out of 10s. Like I literally have to make it to the end with not one complaint.
I think that's how it should be, frankly.
Yeah, you know, right? Some people are like, well, you can't make it be perfect. I'm like, oh no, I've played perfect games. I've played perfect games, and Metroid Prime is one of them. But yeah, so they're both fantastic. Dread is solid 9 out of 10. Might be a 10 out of 10 if you don't care about those particular points. Both excellent first games to play.
Good to know. Well, yeah, I'm definitely gonna be buying the Prime remaster one of these days. I just haven't found the right moment yet with other games and stuff. Dread I probably won't get just because 2D games just aren't my cup of tea. And I think, you, the one listening, I think whether you prefer 2D, 3D, if you like both or what. But if you haven't given Metroid a try, we'd really recommend it. I can personally speak for Prime. I love Prime. And you heard all Zack had to say about Metroid Dread and all the other Metroid games. So, do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I just think that, I'd love to say that, Metroid series is wonderful. It's a really wonderful, underappreciated series, in my opinion. I mean, there's millions of fans.
It's completely underrated,
but it's totally
yeah.
underrated.
Yeah.
Like, with the kind of cult following that Hollow Knight has, I feel it's criminal Metroid doesn't have the same. And so if you've been wondering, with all the fuss that Nintendo's been giving around Metroid, should I try it? Should I give it a shot? Start with Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime is one of the easiest ones you can get into. It's also only $40. Dread is a full $60. You can get Prime Remastered for $40.
Oh, yeah.
So it's cheaper. It's more immersive. It's the best looking one of them all.
That's true.
And
I forgot it was only $40.
Not only this, you can hook up your original GameCube controller to the Switch and play with the exact GameCube controls from 2002.
Now that, I don't think I knew that. That's really cool.
You can play with a GameCube controller, full original GameCube controls on the remaster if you so choose. You can do dual stick.
If you want it.
You can use the gyro.
Want that.
You can also take the Joy-Cons off and play like the trilogy. You can also play with aiming. So they have an option for everyone. It's the most accessible, most immersive, best looking, and cheapest to get into. So okay. No brainer in my opinion. Just freaking go out and buy it already.
Okay. Well, everybody play Metroid. And please let us know your thoughts. Let us know in the comment section if you've played Metroid games, which ones are your favorites. If you don't like Metroid, why don't you like Metroid? That'd be kind of cool to hear. Shout out to Joshua. Thank you for being our patron, our down-to-earth cockatiel. We appreciate your support so very much. And Zack, do you want to plug anything, or how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, I just want to plug Metroid. I can't shut up about it. Buy Metroid. Please, us fans, we have been waiting so long for this game to be resurrected and be in the popular eye again. Go out, buy the game, keep it relevant, and start enjoying all the stuff that us hardcore fans have been, loving and sticking to all these years. It's a big part of gaming history. These games really did help define a genre. And it's worth at least giving it a shot.
You heard it from the history major. We have a lot of cool things planned up. Just as a heads up, so you guys know, I finished Fire Emblem Engage. My review of that will be coming up. I started 2 new games. I have some thoughts on that. And of course, we'll get Alex back next time. So we love you all. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.